But I mean, the weird thing was, if this was 3 years ago, we would have been gutted about it. But because, I did a tour with him, you've interviewed him, we have more of a personal connection now with Pat than we would have had before.
Well, yeah, definitely. Yeah, he came over in 2008. You did a tour with him, and I interviewed him for Inside the Ropes for the Patreon section. And I met him as well at the convention that year, which was, a real thrill. I mean, he was a larger than life character, a huge personality and massive colossus of the business. I mean, basically did everything in wrestling, apart from hold the world heavyweight title. And that was almost a credit to Pat, the fact that, he wasn't WWF champion, obviously held top titles in various territories, but was never really, never held a properly recognized world title. But that was Pat. He was the guy that made the champion. He made Bob Backlund look better than he ever had. And that was Pat. I mean, he was a tremendous, huge figure in wrestling, did so much in the ring, and in many ways, even more outside of the ring, behind the scenes, when he was working with Vince McMahon in the 80s, 90s, and well into the 2000s, even beyond that. So, huge, huge figure in wrestling.
And I guess the weird part of it all is that I remember when we brought him over in 2018 for the tour, and we were doing Glasgow and London, and then we were going to be at the MediaCon in Manchester. And the night before, or the day before, we're traveling to Manchester, and Pat was like, "Are we going out? Are we going out to the bars?" So Q later on, myself and Ollie and the rest of the ITR crew end up out on Canal Street with Pat Patterson on a Friday night. And he was just, he was walking up to drag queens going, "My lady, how are you?" And he was just like giving them all the chat, the charm offensive. And then he, as he wants to do karaoke. And we're on, and but it's like,
Did any of the people know who he was?
no, not one person knew who he was. So he kind of enjoyed that nobody really knew. Although I remember, like, we were leaving a bar and we were going up the stairs, and a guy walked down the stairs and he did a double take, and I think the double take was, "Is that Pat Patterson?" But then just walked on. So I like to think that guy still questions if that happened. But like, so he wants to do karaoke, and he needs to do karaoke. It's just, he's in Manchester, he's like 77, he wants to sing My Way. So we go to this pub and we get in, and then the drag queen DJ was like, "We're done. We're closing up. It's midnight. Time's up." And we're like, "Oh God!" And Pat's gutted. So then we have to put the charm offensive on with the security guy out front. So he then goes up to the DJ and says, "Let that old guy from America do karaoke." So Pat does My Way on a Friday night, and all these like teens and 20s are like cheering him on at the end. And then he was the first up the next morning, tucking out of the breakfast at the Holiday Inn before we go to MediaCon at 8:30 in the morning. So Pat Patterson can outdrink and do better than we can, and we're younger than him. So that was a great memory to have.
Yeah, I mean, that's practice, isn't it? I mean, that's some constitution, that's some stamina. There's Pat showing you how it's done at the age of 77.
And that's what he was like. And he was very sarcastic. He was very, he would give you like an eye roll or a look or a nod, and he was very sharp that way. So, and I was talking to Bertrand Hebert earlier today, who came over with him, and he said that Pat had really good memories of the trip to the UK. So that's pretty special that he enjoyed it as much as we all did.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's really funny as well. I'm sure a lot of those people were looking at Pat, who's this guy, not knowing this was a person who headlined the Cow Palace in San Francisco for like 10 years, headlined Madison Square Garden with Bob Backlund for 4 consecutive MSG shows. First time a heel challenger had ever done that. I did that in 1979 between July 2nd, September 24th. I mean, this is a guy who performed before more than any of these people put together combined ever will. And what a career, Kenny. I mean, what a performer. Started in Montreal in 1958, went down to Boston under orders from Mad Dog Vachon, who was one of his mentors, went over to Pacific Northwest to wrestle for Don Owen, did really well there, then went to San Francisco for the legendary Roy Shires. I mean, what a character he was. Real stickler for logic and reasoning in his storylines and his matches and his programs, his feuds, everything all had to make sense within the parameters of pro wrestling. So did really well in San Francisco, became the biggest star there for many years. Had a great run with Vern Gagne in a tag team with Ray Stevens. Still remembered as one of the greatest, the great tag teams of all time, Patterson and Ray Stevens. Stevens, another incredible worker and personality and star, and like a legend in locker rooms as well. Did some stuff in Florida for Eddie Graham. Then got the call from Vince McMahon Sr. in 1979 and went there. Ended up beating Ted DiBiase for the North American title, and then became the first Intercontinental Champion, Kenny.
In Rio De Janeiro, that famous tournament in Brazil where they just can't seem to find high quality enough footage of that absolute legit tournament.
I'll tell you what, I've been looking, I've been doing this for like nearly 29 years. I've been scouring the record books, still haven't found any evidence. I have no idea who Pat beat in the final. I asked Pat, he didn't know either.
He's wrestled a lot of matches. I'm going to very quickly, we've got this figure here. I'm going to put it up a little bit closer because you can actually see Rio De Janeiro is on his t-shirt. First IC champ, Rio De Janeiro. So, I mean,
have you opened that figure yet, Kenny?
No, I've not opened that. I'm not going to open that. Look at that.
Maybe the information is inside there.
Tremendous. But yeah, it's just so good. So, I mean, the fact that he won that tournament, but you talked about how in Manchester the people wouldn't have known who he was. He was also the guy who had to look after Mr. T and Muhammad Ali at the first WrestleMania. So he's just a guy who's done everything in wrestling, and people kind of my age, I guess, and know him more for the stuff that he's done after he was in the ring. But I mean, he would talk a little bit about how crucial him being kind of one of Vince McMahon's right-hand men was to kind of WWF being where it is now.
Well, I mean, he'd started contributing to the booking when he was working for Roy Shire in San Francisco. He would pitch ideas to him, and Roy liked some of his ideas. So I think he had a reputation really from the 1960s as an ideas man. Somebody who could come up with a finish that was going to be inventive, that was original, that was going to be good for business. He started slowing down his career in about 81, kind of went sort of part-time, did some commentary in WWF, obviously stayed there as well. Then he got out of the ring, became like a road agent, commentator, general sort of helper behind the scenes. And then George Scott was asked to leave in summer of 1986. He was Vince's booker at the time. George Scott and Hulk Hogan did not see eye to eye on many things, so Scott was removed and Pat Patterson was installed as Vince's new booker and right-hand man because he was so well respected by Vince. He had so much to offer this company, had been offering so much to this company ever since 79 when he came in as a wrestler, and then for many years backstage while wrestling, and then when he became a full-time office employee. So, I mean, from 86 onwards, he was Vince's booker, his right-hand man, worked 7 days a week alongside Vince, coming up with the stories, coming up with feuds, hiring the talent. He was a big part of that process in talent relations and bringing people in like, Randy Savage, like Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, people like that. He was, integral. I mean, he's very famous, of course, for inventing the Royal Rumble in 1988. He knew the value of a battle royal. That was a huge drawing gimmick match in the 60s and 70s. There was always a huge battle royal in San Francisco each year. But by 87, 88, Pat knew that they could do more with the battle royal, that it needed modernizing, that it needed tweaking. So he has always been credited with coming up with the Royal Rumble, which, is that the biggest match of the year in WWE? I mean, it probably is. That and the main event of WrestleMania are the two biggest matches of the year. That will, Patterson will forever live on. Every time we think of the Royal Rumble now, we're going to think of Pat Patterson because that was his invention. Like War Games was Dusty's invention in Crockett Promotions. Royal Rumble was Pat's, and that's become bigger as the years rolled on. Now, of course, we have two Royal Rumbles each year. So he was huge, really like a match, really good at laying out the matches as well. I noticed that Kurt Angle tweeted a picture of himself, Pat, and Shawn Michaels that was taken after the match at WrestleMania 21 between Angle and Shawn Michaels, which was easily the best match of the night at WrestleMania 21. And Angle was just giving like a huge amount of credit to Pat for helping them put the match together and the success that it was on the night. I mean, that was a triumph, wasn't it, Kenny, that match?
Yeah, it was, and he was really known for that, right? Because I know The Rock has also said that he was very instrumental in kind of putting his matches together or coming up with finishes. Brett's talked about him, Sean. So kind of he ran the gambit of all these years of people still, even 2005. You know, he's by that point in his early 60s, late 50s or whatever, early 60s, and he's still putting together these matches that, as you say, are matches of the night.
Yeah, absolute classic, and Pat just knew the business, he lived it, he breathed it. Obviously, he did leave WWE, did retire, but always came back and always had a connection with the company, and was so well respected by the talent who looked up to him as this father figure, this oracle, this encyclopedia of information. I mean, Vince was just like, Pat's the man when it comes to putting matches together. Go and see Pat. I mean, Vince wouldn't really get involved in that sort of thing. He'd leave it to Pat. That was the amount of respect and the amount of faith that Vince had in Pat Patterson. It was just absolute. You know, Pat was one of Vince's closest confidants. You know, he was a huge part of the success of that company in the 80s. I mean, you can't really underestimate what he did for the business, not only in the ring as one of the greatest workers who ever lived, but also as, you know, an employee, creative guy, ideas man, and, you know, all-round wrestling expert, which is what he was.
Thanks for watching the video. If you want to support the channel, you can sign up to our sponsor, ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN means that when you go online, your data is 100% secure no matter what you do on the web. And if you maybe want to watch Canadian Netflix or American Hulu, ExpressVPN have servers in over 100 different countries. We have this amazing Black Friday deal available where you can get 49% off, and the deal is available all the way through to December 14th. All you need to do to sign up is go to itrwrestling.com/VPN.